Welcome to Career Tools. How to softly use acceptance criteria. Part 2. This cast answers these questions. How do I make sure I deliver work assignments that meet the required standards? How do I get the information I need to get results with work assignments? How do I analyze work assignments for standards if they're not given? Not that that ever happens. Well, if you want to answer these questions and more, keep listening. Here we go.
Have you vowed to be more productive in 2020? Yeah, me too. With a personal license, you get access to the show notes for all of our publicly released podcasts, which means you can read rather than re-listen when you come up against a problem. 10 minutes instead of 30? That's a productivity hack right there. Go to the website, search for personal license under products, and find out more details.
Okay, so how about high S's?
S stands for steadiness. So high S's are the grandmother or the mother of the team. They're the ones who bring cookies. They're the ones who always say good morning to everybody. They're the ones who know how everybody's feeling about everything. They like to go slower, so they're in the reserved part of the circle, and they are people focused. So unlike the high I's who go fast but like people, the high S's go slow, and like people, they tend to be fairly quietly spoken. They're the kind of people who have, a special cushion for visitors in their cube. They have a special cup, and they're very focused on people's comfort.
Right.
So they will answer all your questions because they want you to have all the information that you need before you start.
Right, like the difference between high I and high S, who are both focused on people, right? This is a joke we make. Again, folks, we're just kind of joke, kind of true, kind of half joking, half true, half joking. Is a high I is the person who goes like, well, enough about me. What do you think about me?
Yeah.
And the high S is the person going around like, Mary, how are you feeling? Like, are you okay with this? Really? You're okay with this decision? Joe, how about you? Are you okay with this decision? That's the high S. The high I is like, no. So that's kind of the difference between high I and high S, although they're both focused on people.
High S's will also answer questions all the way through, whereas a high D is just like, have you not done it yet? A high S is, oh, you need some more information? Of course, I'll answer your questions. So because they're very
You'd be rude not to.
Exactly. Yeah. Because high S's are focused on comfort, like it's helpful to phrase your questions that way. So, for example, you might say, would it be easier for you if I give you just a couple of pages, or would you like an in-depth report? Or would you prefer me to send it to you and then schedule some time to talk, or vice versa? Or your input is very valuable to me. May I show you a draft of my comments before I produce the final documents?
I love that. Your input is very valuable to me. Man, yes. Very high S. Nicely done, Wendy Lord.
Thank you. I've had some practice. So when you're asking the questions, you're putting them in a way, they're much longer. There's a lot of words compared with what we did for the D and the I, and we're putting them in the context of what is important to the person who we're working with. For a high S boss, I think it's harder to know whether or not you've been successful because they tend to be very soft with their criticism. They don't want to hurt your feelings. So even if something's like wildly wrong, they may just go with it just to not hurt your feelings, especially if it's your PR or, someone who doesn't have authority or, the customer or whatever. So if you create something to be used and it's not used, that would be your sign. They may also apologize to you for getting it wrong. Like, I'm so sorry I didn't explain it fully for you. Or I'm sorry I didn't use the right words to help you. Or I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you something important. So they take the blame for your error.
Right.
In a way, a D will let you take the blame for his error as well as your own. An S takes all of the blame.
Yeah, if your boss is a high S and they say things like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must not have told you how important this thing was." Like, if you're a high D, you're like, "Oh, okay, you messed up, boss. That's okay. I'm okay with that." That's no, it's not.
That's
not
the
really,
highest's way of telling you screwed up.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not going to take it that way. They're telling you messed up, but why can't they be direct? Well, they don't. They don't want to hurt your feelings. But yeah, that's one of the downsides of work for IS. Sometimes they soft sell your failures, and if you're dense like me, sometimes you discount it. Don't pay attention to it. So don't make that mistake.
Don't know till you're fired. Okay, so the last one in the disc is high C. So high Cs are the detailed-oriented, particular, methodical type of people. My dad's an engineer. When he gets out the IKEA furniture, he actually reads the instructions twice before he gets the rest of the box out, and then he lines all the pieces up. He's a classic high C. They want to get things right. They'd rather be right than fast. And if you get it wrong, they'd like to tell you how you got it wrong too.
Right.
So you probably don't have to ask a high C questions because they will give you all the detail and more in the assignment.
Right. So on our scale of people versus task and reserve versus assertive, they are task focused, getting things done, and reserved. And that comes across as focused on every nitty gritty detail to an observed level. If you are in fact a high I, for example, like, what is wrong with you? You're not focused on people. I don't hear you say anybody's name, and like, you're no fun. You're a downer.
I remember Tracy, our finance director, gave Mark a report that was it was like annual sales or something, and it had down to the penny. And Mark was just like, I don't know why you didn't round this up to thousands. It's
Right.
just the difference between where they think in terms of detail.
Exactly.
The other thing about high Cs that I found is they sometimes act like Ds in the workplace. So if it's a manager or a director, because they have less time and they're working at a higher level, they either give you way, to my mind, way too much detail, but I'm a high D, or they may not come across that way. So you have to be careful to work that out beforehand, because if you give them something that's what is right for a high D, they won't like it, even if they didn't give you the work assignment like a high C. Sometimes the boss part overrides the C-ness part.
Yeah. At some point if you're a boss, at some point you have to get over your high C need for incredible detail because you just don't have enough time, right? I mean, so it tends to override the high C part. But on the other hand, they may not get the details all that often with you, but don't surprise if all of a sudden they just want to delve down into like infinite level of detail.
Yeah, so you have to have it, you have to know it, you have to be aware of it, you have to be ready for it, but don't be surprised if your boss is a high C, but you don't always get that level of detail.
Yeah.
So when you get an assignment from a high C, take some time to think about how you're going to approach it, and then send them an email with your approach and a list of the factors that you think are relevant and your questions. So unlike a high D who would just go do the first thing they think of, and if they get it wrong, that's okay, I didn't waste much time, I'll just go do it again. A high C thinks about the way they're going to do something, and they think about it all the way through with all of the factors. So they do it right first time. And so if you're doing something for your high C boss, then you need to follow that process too, because otherwise they won't believe what you've done has any quality. If you do it fast and dirty, they'll just believe that you must have missed a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep. They find one mistake, they're going to assume there's mistakes all over it. So
Yeah.
it's awful.
So questions for a high C can be longer, but they must be precise. You can't ask, for a flight, which day do you want to get there? Because you won't get the level of detail that, you want to say, hey, there's a flight that leaves at 11 and it gets in at 4:03, which means you'll get to your hotel at 4:57. Is this okay? Right? It has to be detailed and precise. And when you deliver whatever it is that you're going to deliver, you want to make sure that you have your research and your background material and the reasons for making the choices you did all included in whatever you send to your boss. They may not want to answer your questions, but they sure want all of the high C detail when they get the result. Because if it's not all there, they'll assume that you didn't think about whatever it is that they've thought of, or they'll think that you didn't consider something that they think is important. So you have to have all of it. High C bosses won't be effusive when you get it right. Again, they're not people focused, so they tend not to be effusive, and they're reserved. So effusiveness is kind of the opposite to their nature, but they will detail all the places that you went wrong. So at least you'll know when you went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the shorter the response, the better you're doing. Because if there's no list of things you did wrong, then you've probably got it right. So that's the way to know whether or not you're getting it right for a high C boss.
Yeah. Don't expect a lot of praise because perfection is the standard.
Yes, exactly. It's like at the conferences, the training conferences that we do, we say, rate the conference on a scale of 1 to 10, and all the high C's put 9, and then the comments say, right, nobody ever gets 10.
And Mark's a high I and Heidi high I, but that drives him crazy.
Yes.
If you're high C and you come to a conference and the only thing that you could critique is I can't give you a 10 because nobody gets a 10, like, oh my God.
The high I's just add dots, right? 11, 12, 15 underneath.
Yeah. And by the way, as we're going through this, these are people's natural behaviors, and somebody who is wise and smart and a good manager or a good direct, you don't have to engage in your normal behavior all the time. So there are plenty that suggest that there are a large percentage of people who are that introspective. And unfortunately, that's not true. But there are many high C's out there who have learned to put aside their normal behavior, and they consciously do things like, hey, Joe, this was really great. I appreciate the time you spent in it. I appreciate the sacrifices you made. Thanks for working with Mary and Jill and Sam and making this as good as it did. You built a team along with getting the work done. Okay, those are all words that high C's generally don't use, like names, like Mary,
That sounded
Sam,
like
Ted,
a high S response.
right? And talk about, making the team feel good and all. That's not high C, but a smart high C talking to a high S is going to say things like that. So I know. So you might be the high C. If I'm making fun of high C, you may be the high C that does what I just described, right? So don't get offended, please.
No, we're making fun of everybody.
That's my specialty.
As Mike says, you can adapt to any style. This is why we're telling you what your boss wants, because what he wants is not necessarily what you want to do or what you would do if you were in his space, to Mike's point.
This is all about adapting, right? That's why we're sharing this, right?
Exactly. It's all about adapting so your boss gets what they want. But for any boss, it's entirely possible that any of them will say, I don't know, to a question. So, for instance, you're researching competitor products. For how far out you can go into the future depends on the information that those people are releasing, or how good the market analysis or the market analysts are, and how much information you can find. So if you go to your boss, one of the things you want to know in order to get the assignment right is, how far into the future do you want me to go? The answer might be, I don't know, because I don't know what's out there. It's not terribly helpful, or it's not unhelpful, but it's not very precise. But that's the way of everything, really. There are some things where you will get every single it's really easy to give people super detail or a lot of constraints around booking a flight, because we all know where we want to go, where we want to get there. We all have preferences about where we want to sit and all that kind of stuff. But something like, research the competitor landscape is much more woolly. And so you can expect someone to say, I don't know. And when you produce it, still say, no, I think that's not what I wanted. I wanted it further out or further in or whatever. And that's kind of the nature of doing work. It's not a one and done thing most of the time. Most of it's, I got this. Where should we go from there? So when working with your boss and your peers and your customers, build up a list of things they normally look for in assignments so that you can decide on those things. You can eliminate those things as questions when you get assignments. Now, just don't forget that some of these people have role power over you. And if they don't want to answer your questions for whatever reason, they don't have to. So even if you ask questions, even if you ask them in the right way, according to their profile, you might still get, I don't know, or I can't be bothered to think about it, or just work it out, because they have role power and they can make that decision. This message is for all you Austinites out there. We will be in Austin January 21st to the 23rd, 2020. And there's 2 reasons for signing up right now. First of all, we are going to have all 3 of our trainings: Effective Manager Conference, Effective Communicator Conference, and the Effective Hiring Manager Conference. So you can get all your management training done by the end of January, and you can say that you succeeded in all your New Year's resolutions around management training. The other reason to sign up now is Austin has a habit of selling out, and we don't want you to miss out. So go to the website, look for training, and sign up now. We're excited to see you there.
Okay, so next point, using acceptance criteria as a checklist. What's that about?
So there's no point in working out the acceptance criteria, thinking about the constraints for the assignment, or asking a bunch of questions about what do you want the solution to be if you don't then use that information. So what you're doing is asking questions to get the parameters of the solution, the points you have to hit, the standards you have to reach. That's the point of doing all this asking. And so having some of those usual criteria saved or written down is really useful so that you can, skip that piece. But it would be stupid to do all that work and then not use it as a checklist for your solution. So when you've done the work, go back and look at it and say, did I hit all of the things that my boss normally likes to see, or that he specifically said he wanted to see on this assignment? And if you can write it down, or if you can have it on a computer or whatever, and actually go down the list with your document or with whatever you're producing, check it properly. Like, don't think, oh, I know what's on that list, I'm not going to look, because, it's really easy to think, oh, I've covered everything in your own head and be wrong. So don't do all of the work and then waste it in the last 5 minutes by just hitting send before you've actually checked the checklist.
Yeah, like surely everybody listening to this podcast, before they send an email, before they press send, they spell check it every time.
Right.
Right, folks? You all do that, right? You don't send out an email before checking the spelling. Like it always, but I'm high C, so that would drive me crazy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not the best speller ever as well. So like I've gotten around that by, I do a spell check. Like I'd recommend you all do that.
The technology's there. Not using it is just silly.
Yeah. So, okay. So checklist, good.
So the last part of this is don't be pedantic. And when I was writing this, Mark asked me, what's your definition of pedantic? And I said, obsessively interested in unnecessary detail. Pedantic is the people who correct you when you say fewer and not less. Pedantic.
God, it just drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy. Like, really? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Right. Or you write something that's about what you're thinking in your own head, and then they correct your grammar, which is just weird. Like, I don't do grammar in my own head. I have a friend who's like this. If there's a sign in an airport and people aren't following what the sign says, she just gets really angry. These people are pedantic. So even when you're clear about what's required, it's entirely possible that your boss or your peer or your customer will reject the solution that you bring. If you know it's what they asked for, and you've got the acceptance criteria and you've checked your checklist and you're absolutely sure that's what they asked for, don't argue. Don't say, yeah, but look, here's the list and this is what you asked for.
Yeah, here's the requirements document. Let's go over it. Look, we did everything.
Yeah.
Great. No.
Because you are just destroying that relationship. There's nothing people like more than being told they're wrong. So just let it go and start over. It just happens.
I've shared this story before on a podcast or two. I had a boss one time. She said, Mike, you're really smart. And 99% of the time, you're absolutely right. But sometimes it's better to be effective than right. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'll tell you, one of the key lessons in my life. I did not like hearing it, but yeah, choose effectiveness over rightness.
Yeah. My dad always says, engage brain before opening mouth.
Oh, is that what she meant? Okay. Oh, it's even worse than I thought.
No, I think it's different, but similar. Okay. Just don't say, I think you're stupid, because that doesn't get you anywhere. So the absence of someone agreeing that your work meets the standard required, even if it meets the acceptance criteria, is not a reason for you to use the acceptance criteria as a bludgeon to hit them over the head with. Or it may be a reason, but it's still not a good idea to do it. You might want to, but the long-term relationship consequences of doing so are so negative that it's not worth the momentary satisfaction.
And it is momentary. Believe me, it is
Punching someone
momentary.
in the face.
You may win the argument, but she's still your boss. Right? She's going to be around a while.
She decides how much you're paid and what you get to do every day. Yeah. The better the relationship, the more likely it is that you get the right kind of answers so that you don't have to redo work or you don't get it wrong. Like, the better your relationship is, the more likely even a high D is to answer your questions. The more likely a high S is to be more straightforward with you so that you can get what you need. So concentrate on the relationship as well. And all of us suffer sometimes from not knowing what we want until we see it. You know, you order something online and it comes and you're like, no, that's not what I wanted. Even though the picture looked right and the description looked right, it's not quite right. You know, someone, you ask for pants and they bring you pants and you say, no, I wanted dressier ones, or less dressy, or longer or shorter, or different color, or something else entirely. And you couldn't describe what it was until you saw what you didn't want. Bosses and peers and customers have that same experience with work product.
Yeah, let it go. Folks, sometimes folks are moving so fast, you may believe that they owe you more detailed requirements, and they may actually believe they owe you more, or they should give you more detailed requirements. And the fact is they can't. And not always because, not always self-imposed, sometimes self-imposed, but often it's based upon things you don't know. So just get over it. It's life.
Yeah.
It's not always the way we want. I wish it were, but it's not.
Yeah. And, people may not have described what they wanted well, or perhaps you didn't do a good job interpreting it or applying the specialized knowledge that you have that they wanted you to use. It's frustrating, but it's part of working with other people. And as far as we know, there's no jobs where you can work entirely alone. So you'll find this everywhere you go. So you just have to learn to live with it. And if you really need to console yourself, remember you got paid to do it once and you're being paid to do it over.
Oh, there you go. Okay. And hopefully you're not getting paid to do it over as a function of your mistakes.
Yeah, let's hope.
Usually
right?
a good thing.
Acceptance criteria are really useful. The concept is really useful. You don't even need to share them with the person asking for your services if you can build them up from experience. Just use them wisely and not as a bludgeon for making other people wrong. We're trying to be effective, and that with other people, that means adapting to their preferences and not imposing yours.
Well said. All right. Thanks, Wendy. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mike. It was fun.
That's it for this week, everyone. Hope you have a great one, and we'll see you later. Bye.